The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Summary: The Things They Carried is a collection of interconnected short stories by Tim O'Brien, published in 1990. Set during the Vietnam War, the book follows a group of soldiers, primarily Tim O'Brien himself, as they grapple with the physical and emotional burdens of combat. Through narratives blending memory and fiction, O'Brien examines themes of trauma, memory, and the complexities of courage and survival, blurring the lines between truth and storytelling to capture the war's impact on the human psyche. Plot summary. 1. The physical and emotional burdens of war. The book's opening story, The Things They Carried, introduces the soldiers of Alpha Company and the items they carry, both literal objects and emotional burdens. Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, for instance, carries letters from a girl named Martha, symbolizing his longing for love and normalcy. Each soldier carries items reflecting their personalities, fears, and coping mechanisms, from weapons and protective gear to good luck charms. These physical objects symbolize the heavier burdens of guilt, fear, and responsibility that weigh down the soldiers. 2. Fear, death, and guilt in combat. O'Brien recounts the fear and chaos of combat, exploring the soldiers' conflicted feelings about bravery and survival. In On the Rainy River, he recalls receiving his draft notice and facing an intense moral dilemma: flee to Canada to avoid the war or face the draft to avoid shame. Ultimately, he chooses to fight, more out of fear of embarrassment than patriotism, highlighting the complex emotions surrounding courage. In The Man I Killed, O'Brien fixates on the death of a young Vietnamese soldier he kills, grappling with guilt and reflecting on the humanity of his enemy. 3. The role of storytelling and memory. Stories play a central role in the soldier's survival. In How to Tell a True War Story, O'Brien reflects on the nature of war stories and their truthfulness, asserting that the truth of a story isn't about factual accuracy but emotional honesty. His friend Mitchell Sanders recounts surreal, haunting stories that are told and retold by the soldiers, underscoring how they use storytelling to process trauma and find meaning in the incomprehensible. 4. The impact of war on identity and relationships. The stories also capture the soldiers' complex relationships and evolving identities. Sweetheart of the Song Tre Bong tells of Mary Ann Bell, a young woman who travels to Vietnam to visit her boyfriend but becomes captivated by the jungle, transforming into a warrior. The story illustrates how the war reshapes people, stripping them of their former selves. In Speaking of Courage, Norman Bucker returns home after the war, struggling to reintegrate into society and haunted by memories of his friend Kiowa's death. His sense of alienation highlights the difficulties veterans face as they reconcile their wartime experiences with civilian life. 5. Loss, trauma, and coming to terms with the past. The death of Kiowa, a beloved member of the platoon, profoundly impacts the soldiers, becoming a recurring motif. Kiowa's death, particularly how he dies in a sewage field, embodies the waste and futility of war. In Field Trip, O'Brien returns to the site of Kiowa's death years later, with his young daughter, in an attempt to process his grief and honor his friend's memory. The book's final story, The Lives of the Dead, reveals how storytelling allows O'Brien to keep the memories of the dead alive, particularly that of his childhood friend Linda, who died of a brain tumor. The connection between her death and the war underscores how loss transcends time, and how storytelling helps preserve the humanity and dignity of those lost. Key themes. 1. The weight of physical and emotional burdens. The soldiers carry both physical items and invisible emotional burdens, which shape their identities and actions. The things they carry reveal their inner fears, regrets, and desires, underscoring how personal history and trauma define them. 2. Storytelling as survival and coping. Storytelling is essential to the soldier's survival, providing a means to process trauma, make sense of their experiences, and connect with others. For O'Brien, stories preserve the memory of lost friends and serve as a form of healing, capturing the emotional truth of war. 3. The blurred line between truth and fiction. O'Brien challenges the notion of absolute truth in his narrative, suggesting that emotional truth can sometimes be more impactful than factual accuracy. This blurred line between truth and fiction reflects the complexities of memory and trauma, as well as the difficulty of capturing the full reality of war. 4. alienation and the challenges of reintegration. The stories explore the difficulty of returning to civilian life after experiencing the horrors of war. Characters like Norman Bowker illustrate the isolation and inner turmoil that veterans often endure, highlighting the lasting impact of war on their mental and emotional well-being. Conclusion. The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien is a powerful exploration of the psychological and emotional weight of war. Through interconnected stories, O'Brien reveals the complexity of courage, memory, and storytelling, capturing the deep scars left by combat on the minds and souls of soldiers. His work is a testament to the power of storytelling to heal and preserve, offering readers a nuanced view of war's enduring impact on the human spirit.